Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 2024 Latinx KidLit Book Festival. Please do read our anti-harassment policy in the chat box. Hi, Julia. I'm Luz Yadira Herrera. Hi, everybody. I am based here in Los Angeles. And I started my teaching career in New York City public schools. So I was in New York City for a very long time, but now I'm back home in LA. And I now teach future teachers. So I teach future bilingual teachers at California State University, Dominguez Hills. So that's what I've been doing for the last few years. And I work with future teachers everywhere to learn how to use beautiful children's literature in their lessons and their teaching. And yes, I'm so excited to be here with you all today. And before I introduce our star here today, and of course our students, I want to just remind you to don't forget to subscribe to the Latinx KidLit Book Festival's YouTube channel. And if you're a school, classroom librarian, or educator joining us, our school visit fund is back. So you can enter to win a free visit from a Latina author or illustrator for your classroom or library. And you can find the link to the entry form in the chat as well. So thank you. So we are here with Pedro Martín and also wonderful students from Durham School of the Arts. So hi, everybody. Pedro, can you introduce yourself and say hello?
Sure. Hey, Durham School. Hey, everybody on the internet. How's it going? Yes, I'm Pedro Martín. I'm the author illustrator of Mexikid, a graphic memoir. I grew up in California. I actually was born in San Fernando and grew up in this little town called Watsonville. If you read the book, you kind of know a little bit about that. And then after college, I studied graphic design and illustration at San Jose State. I got recruited to work at Hallmark Greetings as a greeting card artist. And I always say that at schools, I'm like, who knows Hallmark? And I get 0 hands. Those greeting cards, 0 hands. I say birthday cards, and then I get like 5 hands. Well, anyway, draw birthday cards. Let's just say that. And I did that for about 27 years. And then I retired from that job, and I was sitting here in the basement trying to figure out what my next chapter was. And it turns out it was a graphic memoir. So yeah, so this is me now. And I'm really glad to be here. And thank you, Luz, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yes, of course. And I'm so excited to get into the conversation with this book and, of course, with our wonderful students here today. I just wanted to tell you all how I got introduced to this book first, and then I want to, get into some questions, and of course, questions from our students as well. But the publisher reached out to me because I do write guides, like educator guides for books like these. And so the publisher reached out to me and they're like, hey, are you available? Can you write a guide, an educator guide for this book that's coming out? It's a beautiful book and graphic memoir. And they sent me a PDF of it. And I was like, just blown away, Pedro, because I was like, I've never seen something like this before. This is really actually very personal. Like, this is my story too.
Oh.
And sorry.
No, that's to me. Well, first of all, I knew the guide, and I did just before we started recording this, they told me that you were the one who wrote the guide. I had no clue. I love the guide. So thank you so much for doing that. I thought it was just like it came down from heaven or something. I don't know how and here's this. Yeah. Share it. And then I was sharing it around without even asking like what angel did it.
Oh, thank you.
It was loose.
Thank you so much. Yes, I wrote and had the best time writing. It's been one of my favorite assignments, or things that I've had to do for like this kind of work because of how much I connected with it and how beautiful it is. And yeah, just thank you so much for writing this. It really means a lot, even to somebody who's, very, very grown.
Well, it's funny because this was a pandemic project. I mean, this was done in this basement during the pandemic, and so it was all really just in my head the whole time that I was writing it. And so it was kind of like this just big surprise that when it got out, I didn't realize it was going to get out, and I just like people were going to read it. When they did read it, and they said, "Oh, we did this too, and this is us too. And I'm like,
Wow.
it was just like completely blowing my mind. So every time somebody says, yes, we took that same trip, or yes, we were
Yes.
forced to have fun with the family just like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. Thank you.
100%. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's wow. Yeah. So, we have a few questions I'd like to ask, and then I want to invite some of our students to ask some questions as well. But I want to start with one question, and because I know that this graphic memoir was born from your web series called Mexikid Stories, where you drew cartoons, right, to tell some of your stories. Can you tell us how you first got started with that? With those, drawing those stories, illustrating those stories, and telling your story in that way. And then can you tell us how that became this graphic memoir, how this, went from stories to this?
It's a long trail. But yeah, I could give it, I can show you in just a second. I have a prop I can show you. But yeah, like I said, I used to work at Hallmark greeting cards. And when I first started there, it was before computers, before all the artists had computers. And so when you had downtime, when you were done doing your work, you could do whatever you want. You just draw, do whatever you want. And so we had these 3x5 cards in our offices, and 3x5 cards were just where you would write an idea down and hand it to another artist or hand it to an art director. And you're like, here's an idea. And so it was like the currency of ideas was these 3x5 cards. So we had them everywhere. And so as I was sitting there bored, I was like, oh, you know what? I remember this story from when I was a kid about my brother getting hit in the head with a chain, and it broke his head open. I'm like, that was a funny memory. And so I would write that down. And so
a funny memory.
No, yeah. And I tell kids, like, you guys, some things sound traumatic when you first say them. My brother got his head cut open by this chain. But later on, there's like kind of a weird humor and fun remembering that time and how you reacted. And it's like a process of like either coping with or trading information. It's just kind of fun.
I love that. And of course, the family dynamic really comes through, right? You had a really big family, or you have a big family. Yes. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, somebody was about to get hit in the head with a chain out of all 9 of us. So yeah. So anyway, so this is the Batman lunchbox that I used to have in my office. It was just kind of like a prop thing. And when I would get bored, I would take these little 3x5 cards, and I would just start writing little stories. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
And that was upside down. There's my grandfather teaching my dad how to swim. Just these little bits of, these are all upside down. Just little bits of information. And as I finished the story, I would tie a little rubber band around it, and I would drop it in the box. And I would just do that whenever I got bored and just had just this extra time on my hands. And so I kept that box with me for all 27 years. It would just follow me around. And when I retired and I was here in the basement unloading my boxes from my old office, I found that box, and I was just like, it's like, oh, these are kind of fun. I like doing this story. This is really kind of fun. And so I decided, you know what, I'll just start writing them out as a comic series and put them online and just put them out to the world, because I don't know what else to do. And I found that for the first time in a long time, in a very, very long time, I was like really happy, like truly, truly like bubbly happy, because this work was just filling me up. I was alive again. And if you ever work at a company, a creative company, and you do creative work, it belongs to that company. It's not your work. And after 27 years, you realize, like, I've given everything to this company, and you get a paycheck, but that's it. But this was different. This was kind of like, this was filling me up. And so I did that for a couple of years, and the style changed from those cards to the Mexikid stories online. It got a little bit more formal. The stories were about family stories, but they were also about like things Mexican families do, making tamales. It wasn't a specific thing about a story about making tamales, but it was like about the act of making tamales. And it would let me like analyze these things that we kind of like take for granted, just, El Día de tu Santo, like my dad is Pedro Sr., I'm Pedro Jr. And so he would celebrate his Día del Santo, St. Peter's Day, forgetting that I had the same name. He'd be doing like, "Yay, it's my Saint Day, it's my Saint Day." I'm like, "How about this guy? You're making me an extra pancake today, Dad." So it was all kinds of those kinds of stories and stories about history, just anything that kind of popped in my head. Mm-hmm. And I was doing that, and I was really enjoying it. So I did that for about 2 years, and very, very happy, and realized I had put a lot of work into it, and I thought maybe this would be a good opportunity to get these published somewhere else. So I put them all together in a compilation book idea that I had, and I decided to write little written stories between the stories that would link them all together. So it'd be kind of like a memoir, but it was a little looser in that way. So then I started sending out to publishers just blindly. I got a book at the library that says, "Here's all the publishers who do this kind of stuff," and everybody 100% rejected it. No, thank you. The note I got back, one of the notes I got back was like, "We don't understand it. We don't know what the market is. Like, no, thank you." And so eventually somebody said, "Hey, try getting an agent, see if an agent can help you." And so I found an agent, a really wonderful guy named Dan Lazar, and I sent him this book idea, this pitch, and he looked at it and he's just like, "No, this is no good. I don't like this. It's not going to work. Nobody wants this." Like, great. But he said, "There's a line here that you wrote in one of these in-between stories that was kind of fascinating to him." And the line was like something like, "We went down to Mexico to get my grandfather and bring him back to the United States. It got dark, and I don't want to talk about it anymore."
Okay.
And he's like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "Oh, that?" I'm like, "I don't want to talk about it." Wow. And the more I said I didn't want to talk about it, the more excited he got about it. And he's just like, "No, tell me that story." So like, okay. So I told him the story, and he's just like, that's our book. That's that. And so he's just like, "Tell me that whole story, write it down." And so for about 6 months, we went back and forth with me kind of, and to be honest, like I didn't know this format. I mean, I'm a comic book reader, as you can kind of see, but graphic memoir and this format for this age group was just foreign to me. And so he was kind of coaching me, like, this is what he's seen before. And I kind of got what he was talking about. And so I said, "Yeah, here's my spin on it. Here's what I could do." And so we kind of worked on that for a while until the pitch was ready. And that pitch, which was this book, we took to the publisher, Penguin. Right. And they were like, "We're on board. We understand the story. We love how it works out. And, please make this book." So for the next 18 months, I think it was, I worked on the book here in the basement. And like I said, God bless my wife. I love her so much, but I didn't let her see it either. Like, as I was working on it, she wasn't allowed to read it or see the pictures. Mm-hmm. That was because I really wanted her to see the most perfect version of this story. Because it was all like, it was really, the whole process is a very messy process. And I just wanted to make it like super, super perfect. And so she didn't see it until it actually got published. So wow. She was cool. She did find one typo. So. Oh, no. Which no. And that was one of the reasons I didn't want her to see it in the first place, was just like, she's going to point out the typos. She did.
One is not too bad.
Yeah.
So, we have some, I'm sure, amazing future artists or current artists here with us from Durham School of the Arts, right? And so maybe some of you are already starting to sketch out some of your own stories. Maybe you are, like Pedro, kind of, just starting to draw a sketch, or maybe other, expressing yourself in other forms of or through other media, right? But I want to invite you all to ask a question. Does somebody have a question for Pedro? I know that you all read Mexikid, so I would love for you all, or somebody to just, maybe one person, start us off with a question for Pedro. Who wants to start? Yes, can you come closer so we can hear you better and see you as well?
I got a question.
Yay! Question.
What's your name?
Okay. Kimberly.
Hi, Kimberly. Thank you.
So, on page 166, what is that thingy?
Ooh. All right.
166. Okay, let's see. 166.
Oh.
Oh my gosh, I have the Spanish version. I think we have different pages.
I think she's talking about.
Oh, I remember those from yes. Yes.
That's the little pee-pee man.
Yeah. Do you want to?
Oh, she got muted. Wait a minute. She got muted out.
Okay.
Go ahead.
What is it for?
It's for exactly how we used it in the book. It is to prank your friends and family with a little. They see a little doll and they're like, "Oh, how cute, the little naked doll!" And then you squeeze the top of the hat, and it pees on you.
I got a question.
Yes.
Another one. Okay.
Another question. Okay. Was your grandpa really that strong?
Yes. Yes. Abuelito was super strong and surprisingly so. Like we would think, like he slept all the time, but when he wasn't sleeping, he was doing great feats of strength constantly, and we didn't understand it. My brother Noe, who was kind of a bodybuilder at the time, he could not match my abuelito's lifting strength. It was amazing.
Okay, and so when he was fighting them, then like army, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
How did he beat them up?
I think he was fighting the Cristeros. Yeah, he just threw them around like he did those big bales of hay and corn stalks. He was just lifting them because he was used to just lifting things and putting things on top of things. So he was able to just grab people and throw them like they were bags of wheat and stuff like that. So yeah.
So he was just strong, and so I guess that helped out a lot throughout, right? And
Yeah. It was just kind of a weird thing because I think people who work out in the fields for their entire lives get this kind of enormous inner strength that those of us who sit and draw all day do not have.
I hear that.
So that's all. And I'm alive, right?
You're still alive, Kimberly. Yeah. Do you have another question or?
I wanted to say, can y'all please follow me on TikTok?
Okay, what was the question?
Follow me on TikTok.
I'll follow you on TikTok.
You know, if I had a TikTok, well, I don't know if I would consider it, but perhaps I could have my son consider it.
Okay, sounds good.
Let's see.
Thank you for that question.
Thank you so much for your questions. And yes, those little monitos, I remember those. And I mean, there's so many random toys in Mexico. I mean, from my trips, I remember too, like the most random toys and sometimes very useless. I mean, I guess that's, toys are just for having fun too, right?
Yeah, and that was like one of the saner one, or one of like the less problematic ones that I remember seeing as a kid. So there was worse ones, and I was just like, I would love to talk about them, but I can't.
Right, of course.
We'll get canceled. I can't.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we might have another question from another student for Slowly Arts. Yeah. Hi. Can you tell us your name and what's your question for Pedro?
My name is Adriel, and my question is, how did your dad's whistle sound like?
Oh.
Yes, el chiflido.
You know what's really funny? I was just talking to him. I visited him just like last month, and I asked him, I said, can you still do it? He couldn't do it. And I was like, but we knew as a family, we knew it from across miles. Like we could hear it. And it was weird. I can't do it because I've tried it, but it's like, he sucks in and then there's this high pitched whistle and it just, it pierces the ear. It's like a dog whistle, and you can totally hear it in the back of your ear. And what I found out after telling that story is that a lot of dads have a dad whistle. Like my dad was not unique that way. That when I told that story, they were just like, my dad too. His whistle was this, and then they could do the whistle, or they were like, it was something like this. So I wish I could do it. But I feel like if I could, weird kids will start showing up to my house that I didn't want to have at my house. So like, it's better I don't get calling powers that my dad did.
Yeah, can you actually? I want to see from the students. Do your parents or your caregivers, do they have a whistle for you, like when they call you? Because mine totally did. Do yours? I see some hands.
I see some hands.
Yeah, absolutely.
Isn't that bananas, you guys, that they could do that?
Yeah, I see a lot of hands. Yes, our parents have whistles too, like, or our caregivers have whistles. I remember my mother specifically has a different whistle for. There's 4 of us for each of us. So mine's
Wow.
and my brothers, and it's and I do that too now with my child. It's I don't know how that. The whistle that I do have, that's what I use it for.
I'm curious if other cultures have that, or if they have a different like, it'd be like a kind of fun research paper to go like,
yeah, absolutely,
go around the world and find out how you call your kids, and then
it looks like we have another student here. Do you want to introduce yourself and your question?
My name is Justin. Did your grandma actually die to a brain freeze?
Did she actually die from the brain freeze? My grandmother? Yeah. Yes. And I'm here to tell you guys that ice cream is dangerous and it will kill you. Stop eating ice cream altogether. No, I'm kidding. You can have as much ice cream as you want. So when I was growing up, I heard this story, but I heard it from my brothers and sisters. Like they would tell you, they were like, "Oh, did you know Abuelita died from eating ice cream?" You know, and as a kid, you'd be like, "I can believe that. I can 100% believe that, because ice cream headaches hurt. Why wouldn't it kill you? Like if you did it enough times." But then as I grew up and I grew older and I knew what to ask and how to ask the question, I would ask my parents. And my dad said, yes, that was like the inciting incident, that she was eating ice cream. She did have a bad headache and she had to go home. And then she passed on soon after that, but it was probably from an aneurysm or something that was kind of like coincidental to the moment that she had a brain freeze. But in the family lore, it was just like, it was so close that they just had to like put those two things together and be like, that's what killed her, kind of thing. So yes and no. She did die after eating an ice cream. Not 100% sure it was the ice cream. So
right. Oh, thank you. And thank you for your question. Yeah. Wow, I love that we have so many questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, can you say your name and what's your question?
My name's Dante, and my question is, how long did it take to make the book?
How long did it take to make the book? Oh, it took forever, like a lifetime. Like since I was, to actually physically draw and illustrate and paint and do the book, I think it took 18 months in total. Like I said, it was during the pandemic, so time meant nothing. But I would get up at 5:30 in the morning and I would work straight till 5:30 at night, 7 days a week towards the end there, because I had never done a book before and I didn't know what to expect. So I was just like, I just better do as much as I can while I can, and hopefully I'll make the deadline. So yeah, it took about 18 months. But the funny part about it is, when I first started talking to the editor or the publisher about the book, I asked that very question that all students ask this question. It's like, how long does it have to be and when's it due? Like, those are my two first questions. Yeah. How long does it have to be? And the answers were terrible. They said, oh, how long do you want it to be? Well, that's not an answer. I need a number. And they're like, oh, how about 270 or thereabouts? I'm like, okay. What does it do? Oh, when do you think you could have it done? I'm like, oh, just give me a date. Give me a date. So they gave me a date. They said, do those many pages, sketch them all out and have them done by this date. And so I worked. And the day it was due, I put together the PDFs of all the pages that I had done, and it was 320 PDFs. And I was just like, that's really close to 270. Wow. I'm really good. I'm like, yay, me. And then I suddenly realized that wasn't 320 pages. That was 320 spreads. I'd actually accidentally did 640 pages. Almost double what they had asked.
Well, maybe there's a 2 coming.
Anyway, they came back and said that's not possible to do a 640 page book. So they had me cut it in half. So I edited it down a little bit.
Good, yeah, that's a little. Thank you, Dante, for your question.
you.
We have another student here. Do you want to say your name and tell us your question?
My name is Maybell, and my question is: did the guards from the border really take your stuff?
100% took our stuff, and that wasn't the first time they did it either. There was the trip before that. My dad had thought to bring a bunch of TVs to his family in Mexico because they didn't have TVs, and they took every single one of them. My dad had tied them up and kind of hid them in plastic and stuff on top, and thought he could get away with it. And then he couldn't even bribe those guys because like the TVs were worth way more than my dad could give them. So they just took everything. So yeah, so it was called the mordida because they would take a bite of your stuff because they felt that they weren't getting paid enough for doing the job they were doing. So they were like, well, you need extra. And so they would take everything. Yeah. And I was dumb enough to make everything look so nice and new so that they seemed to be like more excited about taking it.
Yeah, wouldn't you like wrap up some of the things that you would take or something like that? I remember
Yeah. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, I love that. And actually that reminds me, I would love to ask you, Pedro, can you show us and tell us about one of your favorite pages or spreads from your book? And
here's the book. So this is page. If you have the English version, it's page like 280, 282, 283. It's this page right here. Let's see, this right.
Yeah.
So this is, if you read the book, this is kind of like the very last bit of the deer situation. So the thing I liked about it, well, the backstory is that the story about the deer, and a lot of the stories were stories that we would tell around the campfire and around kitchen tables and stuff like that for years. It was like a very famous story in my family, and we would always tell it as for comedy purposes. Like it would just be like this. Do you remember that time this happened and it was so funny? And then everybody would tell that story. So when I wrote it the first time, I wrote it as a funny story. And I submitted it as a funny story. And my editor said, wow, this is not a funny story. This is a very traumatic story. She said, I think you need to honor young Pedro's trauma that he was going through at the time. Like you need to think about it as a child when you were there. Think about it the time it was happening, not think about it later on as an adult and how silly that was. And so I did. So I rewrote it more from the perspective of young Pedro and how he was experiencing it. But the scene is my mom telling me how to amputate the hoof off of the deer with the super, super dull butter knife kind of thing. And that sequence was really, really hard for me to rewrite. And then when I did rewrite it, the editor was concerned that it was too dark. Like she was just like, how you even tell that part of the story? Because it's just too much. We might have to cut it out.
Yeah. And
so the challenge was to kind of figure out a way to do it that still told the story, still told the drama, but also got it past the editor. And so that was the solution. And I did a lot of stuff that I was kind of like, if you look at the page, now I lost it, but you look at the page, the color shift it goes to these really, gray and brown things. And even like the sofa there, which is usually a bright yellow, was like suddenly a gray. Like all the color had left Pedro's world. And I felt like, this is a really good time to kind of play with the color and just play with the idea of the blood leaving your face and all this kind of stuff inside of you. So it was really kind of a fun and difficult trick to pull off for me. So that was kind of like the one that I just kind of kept going back to, is this is my favorite little sequence. And it also had this other part of the storytelling problem that I had, which was writing the dialogue of my family, and being respectful of my family and also telling the story. So having my mom, having me trying to write that dialogue and trying to channel my mom was another big, tough road. But I really liked how it came out, and I hope you guys did too.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love to hear that background of that story, or your favorite panel. And I wanted to show you mine as well. And
Okay.
yes, this is so I have the Spanish version in my hands, and it's the beginning of chapter 3. So this is the one that I love so much.
So
And when as I mentioned to you, I wrote the educator's guide for this book. And I remember being so excited when I came to this part, and I started sending like pictures to my siblings. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is our route exactly. When we would travel, from Los Angeles all the way to Nayarit. So our family's from Nayarit.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, so it's just right above Figueros, right, Jalisco, right? And so we would travel the exact same route. And I remember those road trips. I mean, those were definitely some of my favorite memories with my siblings. And I mean, we fought the entire way, 2 days for us to get there, of course. But it was the most fun. And we would see like the scene, the change in scenery. So it just unlocked so many core memories for me. Just being able to go home at least once a year for the holidays. And so it was just such a wonderful. I've never seen this in a book that I can like hold in my hands like this. It was just so wonderful to just see. It was just beautiful. Thank you so much for
Thank you. That's so great. Like I said, I am just blown away by people coming up and saying exactly that. They're like, this was our trip. This is we did this. And even people who grew up in Michigan, and like Michigan to Florida, we had to take a trip just like that. And it was the same thing. We fought all the way.
Yeah.
It was gross. We smelled terrible. And like there was no fun at all. But then when we think about it later on, we're like, that was the best time of our lives.
Exactly.
It was crazy.
Exactly. I love that. And I wanted to just kind of go off of that, I think, with the family sort of way. I wanted to hear a little bit about your family's response to Mexikid. What were some moments in the book that maybe sparked some new conversations with your family as they were able to, hold it in their hands and read it themselves?
Well, it's funny because before I started this whole process, I did text everybody. I had the big text chain going, and I said, this is what I'm doing. This is the story I'm telling. These are the changes I'm making, or these are the kind of the things I'm going to emphasize. And if you have a problem with it, let me know now, and we can talk about it. And to a person, they said, great idea. You should totally do it, and let us know how it goes.
Wow.
Which in my family means, I don't think it's going to happen. Stop bothering us about this. You're a ridiculous person. That's exactly what that means. If anytime we've ever had a conversation and somebody says, that's a great idea, you should totally do it, that means it's not going to happen. So they pretty much signed off on this by saying they don't believe in it. I'm like, perfect. So the book comes out, and then everybody gets a copy. I said, my dad had said, oh, send me a box of books. And I said, yeah. And he said, I'm going to sell them for $25 a piece. So he's going to make a profit. Sorry, Penguin. He's going to make a profit on it. So he's had me send a book, and then he gave them out to the kids and the rest of the family. And I think nobody said anything specific except for Hugo, my brother Hugo. And if you remember in the book, Hugo, when we're in the motorhome and we're going up to the Plan de Barrancas, and the motorhome gets stalled, and Hugo had messed with the levers, Hugo took great exception to that. Like, he was just like adamant. He's like, I did not do that. That was not me. I didn't do that. And I'm like, yes, you did. And we have corroboration from my dad and everybody. It's like, everybody saw you do it. You did it. He's insisting on no. And so he insisted so much that he didn't do it that he started a hashtag justice for Hugo. So anytime he would text me, he would be like, blah, 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 blah. Hashtag justice for Hugo. So he is a firm believer in his innocence. And like, everybody has the memory that they want to have. Perfect. That's fine.
Yeah.
But when I showed it to my parents, the first thing my dad said, of course, he's like, I gave him the hard back. And he like picked it up and he kind of half opened it. And he's just like, that'll take a month to read. And then he put it down. And then later on, we're outside. He's sitting outside and we're listening to music. And a song comes on. And it's Prieta Linda. And he's like singing along with it. And he said, you know, that's your abuelito's favorite song. And I said, yeah, I know that because it's in the book. I mentioned it in the book. He's like, what book? I grab him the book. And I like show him the page. And I show him, and there's abuelito singing the song and in Spanish. And then suddenly he's into the book and he's like flipping through it and he's just so happy. So yeah, everybody took in the book differently. Some people ask, when's the next one coming out? You know, so my brother said, okay, this is great. Now when's the next one coming out? And so everybody had their take on it, and it was exactly their personalities and of how they accepted information and stuff. So it was a good response. It was the best response I could have had.
Yeah, that's so interesting that your dad's response and perhaps that entry point that he perhaps needed to then kind of go back to it and, oh wait, what is this? You know, that's so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a wonderful man, and he's a tremendous storyteller. And when I first told him I sold the book, he got excited because he's like, suddenly he realized you could sell stories. You could sell stories. I'm like, yeah. And then so he would call me like 3 times a week, maybe 4 times a week in the afternoon at tequila o'clock, and he would be like, hey, I have a story for you, and I think it's worth $10,000. I'm like, whoa, tell me the $10,000 story, Pa. And then so he would tell me the story. I'm like, that's pretty good. And I write it down. And then a couple days later, he called back. He goes, hey, I have a $10,000 story for you. I'm like, hit me with it. And then he would tell me the same story he just told me. But he would change things within the story to make it better, to make it funnier. And I'm like, I see what you're doing. But yeah, it was great. So for, several years since the book we started the book, he's been feeding me stories, and they're great stories. They're like, they didn't fit the book, but they're stories that I'm going to go back to for Mexikid stories for sure.
I love that. And I'd love to, I'm thinking about the theme of like storytelling and storytellers. And I think many of our families, right, are very much like storytellers, and perhaps they, maybe they didn't have a chance, right, to tell it in this way, but in other ways of sharing it, during road trips or just gatherings or whatnot. And I'm sure that many of you here and seeing this, and those students at Durham School of the Arts are probably maybe connecting with that. Your families are probably storytellers too, and you have your stories that you can also tell and maybe write about or tell in different ways. And of course, maybe Kimberly, you do that through TikTok, who knows, right?
Yeah.
Other ways, right? There's so many ways to tell stories, but and there's so many ways to express ourselves. And I'm wondering, do the students have any other questions? You're welcome to come up and ask them. And we would love to hear your questions some more. Yeah, is that Dante? Do you want to ask another question, Dante?
Yeah.
Yes.
He's annotated it. Oh, Dante.
In page 50, in the milk part, did that actually happen?
Let's see, page 50.
Yeah.
Which one? This page 50?
Yes.
Which part happened? The milk?
Yes.
Yes. My mom was a master of moving. The motorhome is, I think I might have even described it as it is a moving apartment. Like it's a house that moves with all the sharp edges you could possibly imagine, and nothing is safe. And I don't know why these things are illegal on the street, but my mom could navigate that whole thing. She could make a sandwich. She could pour milk without spilling a drop. It was just magical. She had like that mom center of gravity, and she would just like grab. She knew where everything was. It was magical. It was magical. But yeah, I was a little exaggerating there, but yeah, 100% that would happen.
Yes, I absolutely believe that. Hi. All right, let's make sure we can hear you. And can you say your name and then your question? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Angel. My question is, how many times have y'all visited Mexico?
Ooh.
Oh, um, when I was a kid, you mean?
Yeah.
Or all the time or forever? Well, it's not as much as I would want to have happened when we were kids, and it was easier to like in Luz, when you showed that map, there was that little picture of us like all sitting in the back of a station wagon and stuff like that. When we were little, it was like super easy to cram all of us kids into a single space, throw some blankets on us, and then just go. So when we were kids, it would happen a lot. But as we got older and the older brothers and sisters got more independent, it was just like really, really hard to get everybody to go. And sometimes we would go and, some people would go a week later in a plane, and some people would go there the week before. And so it was just kind of like a little more scattered. So it wasn't as, when we got older, it was much, much rarer. And I think the last time I went with my parents was like I was in college, and my dad was wanting to fix up our house there, and he needed some help, and so I went for a couple weeks there. But yeah, and then I just went to Mexico 2 years ago. Yeah, for just for a visit, and I hadn't been for a long time, so it was really cool. I really, really loved it. So and my wife, it was her first time to go into Mexico too, and she loved it too. And we were in San Miguel Allende.
Oof.
I know, very nice. I don't know why I said it that way, but it was very nice. And they have a toy museum in San Miguel Allende. And as we were walking through the toy museum in San Miguel Allende, I spotted the little pee-pee man in one of the displays. And I'm like, and I went and got my wife, was like, look, it's real. I told you it's real. And we took a lot of pictures of it and stuff like that. I was just so excited that it was not just in our heads, it was a thing.
Oh, absolutely. I remember those clearly.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've been there a bunch of times. I can't even count how many times I've been there, to be honest. And I'll go again this year. So I still go all the time because I have a lot of family there. And we don't drive there anymore. I don't think I could ever make that drive, to be honest. I would, trust my dad to make that drive. But now we all fly now. My dad's too old to be, doing the road trip for 2 days in the car is way too much. But yeah, it was so fun. There's another question here. Can you tell us your name and the question?
My name is Betsabe, and what I was gonna ask, do you know why your mom always had bananas everywhere around the vehicle?
I don't know why my mom did anything, but that was one of the things she always did. Like even older, as we were leaving the house, she would try to put a banana in our pockets or put a banana in our hands. Usually she would like wrap it up in a paper towel, and she'd be like, here, you got to go before you go. I think it's a mom thing to like,
yes,
make sure you're fed at all times. That's how my mom showed love, because I got a lot of love, and you could tell. But the half banana thing was a thing, very, very clear memory of her just not wanting us to waste food, and knowing that if she gave us a whole banana as a kid, we would probably only eat half of it and then throw the rest away. So she would just be like, I'm just jumping the gun on this one and just snap. Here, you take one. And then she'd wrap some of them up in little paper towels and stick them in different pockets in the motorhome, so you could snack. If you wanted a snack and she didn't want to get up, she just point to where it was.
Yeah. I mean, with 9 children, somebody's bound to be hungry at some point, at all times as well.
All the time. It was crazy. Thank you for that question. Thanks.
Is that Kimberly back with another question? Okay. All right.
Check out Kimberly.
So how bad was the haircut?
It was super bad. This is not even any better. But yeah, it was a bad haircut, and I think the worst part of it was the guy spraying the back of our neck with tequila and then wiping his dirty hands on the back of our neck. My mom specifically remembers seeing. She goes, "Look, those are fingerprints like on the back of your neck." It was pretty great.
So it sounds like it was painful too. Yeah. Ooh.
Yes. And everybody else got out of it. I think everybody, after I did my haircut, everybody just split. Nobody wanted to get a haircut after that.
Yeah, I mean, you were kind of like the first to try it, right? And then
I was excited to get a haircut.
There's another question. What's your name and what's your question?
My name is Susani, and I wanted to ask if you still collect the action figures.
Yes. And actually, hold on a second. I still have a bunch of these, but this is the one, my favorite. This is a Mexican Batman action figure, and it smells like gasoline still. So I'm super excited about action figures. I don't buy them as much as I used to, but whenever I find something that's this handmade-ish, I love them.
Raise your hands over there at Durham School of the Arts. Do you all collect any action figures or kind of, collectible items like that?
Yes, my people.
That's amazing. I love that. All right. I want to ask you, Pedro, as well. How do you think Mexikid, such a special book, and it's so unique. The format is just so beautiful that my son, who is, when I first introduced it to him, he was in 3rd grade. Even he was like really into it because he loves, of course, the comic book format, right? I think that's one of the big draws. But how do you think Mexikid adds to the conversation about Latinx experiences and Latinx KidLit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, one of the things that I was very the first time I heard this comment was from an adult talking about their kid. And she said, my kid, this is the first time my kids saw themselves in a book. And I was like, oh, that was a lot to take in, because growing up, we didn't have books in the house. We didn't have books in the house. And I've gotten the question a lot of times, like, what was the first, Latin author that you responded to? What was the first time you saw yourself in a book? And I'm never, honestly, I could say, I thought about it so hard to try to find a book in my memory that I looked at, that I read as a kid, that had a Mexican American kid, a Latino kid, a Chicano kid. I didn't find anything in there. And so when that person said their kids saw themselves in this book, I was just like, that was my goal. I mean, that was perfect, to do something that would heal a wound that I had as a kid, years ago. And if that does that one thing, that makes me super happy, that kids could see themselves in a book again, or for the first time. And I know that the best part about it is that this isn't the only one anymore. This is one of many that are now happening everywhere, where Latinx authors and illustrators are just popping up everywhere. And I'm just one of this great wave coming through, and it's super exciting. And it's not just Latinos, it's Asian, it's everybody is kind of showing up now. And I'm like, this is great. This is perfect. And it makes me really happy that if you see yourself, or if you see something that reminds you of something that, happened to you or belongs to your background, then I'm super, super happy.
Yeah, I love that. And of course, big shout out to the Latinx KidLit Book Festival for bringing all of this right to the forefront. And of course, involving our students and our authors together in conversation, because that's, the students here, that's why I'm sure that's a lot of the inspiration, right? And it's beautiful to hear that. Thank you so much, Pedro, for that. So one of the questions that we had from the audience is actually which graphic novels, I think that you kind of mentioned a little bit about how you weren't really familiar with this format, right? But perhaps as you were doing some of your research, are there any graphic novelists that inspired you?
Yeah, well, actually, I was familiar with graphic novels, but I've never done one before. I hadn't, no idea of how to do it. But there was this cartoonist, she's still around. Her name is Linda Berry, and she did this cartoon strip called Ernie Pook's Comic. And I fell in love with it in college, and it actually kind of spurred me to draw these little things on little 3x5 cards, because her drawings look just like that. They look like effortless and just fast, and just she's telling little bits of story, and it just like was just super exciting. I just really wanted to read more and more of those. And then the guy Matt Groening, who created The Simpsons, he used to do a comic strip too called Life in Hell, which was another one that I just fell in love with because it was like so simple. Like sometimes he would draw the same image over and over and over and over again, like maybe 30 times. And then only one of them, the character says something. And I was always intrigued by like this minimalist take on things. So when you look at Mexikid stories, you see that's heavily influenced by those two, because I was trying to do as little work as possible to tell a story. But then when I got into this situation, I turned the tables on myself, because I felt like this story is too big to play it that way. I have to like bring everything I've ever learned about art and illustration and just pack it in here, because the story deserves everything. So yeah, all the graphic novels in the world show up here at some point, and all my influences are, scattered about behind me, and yeah, I couldn't point to one, but except for those two storytellers.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, there's another question actually. What books or multimedia texts do you like, or would you like to see partnered with Mexikid in conversation at schools and other spaces?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, like, is there a book that you're like, oh, this one would go really well with my book because they have similar like themes, or the storytelling is similar, or something like that? Are there any books that you've seen or any other multimedia that you would partner with Mexikid?
Oh wow, that's a good question. That's a hard one. I know that like some of the ones that I read leading up to this, Persepolis. Do you know Persepolis? Actually, I might have. Oh, here's a copy. I was just looking at it. Persepolis. This is not a setup. I just totally just remembered it was right here.
Perfect.
This is a really wonderful story about a girl growing up during the Iranian Revolution in the 70s. It's a little. It's harder edge, way harder edge than my story. But if memoir is like something that you really dig and you want to like live through somebody else's experiences, this one was really interesting to me, storytelling wise and art wise. It's all black and white, which kind of seems scary for some readers, but it was just kind of like, this is amazing. This is amazing. And then books like Solito, just really, really wonderful stories about overcoming and persevering and getting help from others. But yeah, I think off the top of my head, that's what I got.
No, I love Solito. That would definitely be a YA, right, memoir. Javier Zamora, wonderful book. That would be a wonderful book to put in conversation with Mexikid for sure.
Oh, and a movie by I'm terrible at this. I need my wife to help me. It's called A Million Miles Away, and it has I can't remember the guy's name, the actor's name in it, but it's about this kid who's an immigrant kid. He's the first Mexican in space, and it's a true story, and it's about him and his family struggling to get him to NASA and get him like into the space.
Yes.
And so it's a really beautiful story, and it's one of those movies where I thought like, oh, this is going to be meh. And then the next day I was still talking about it. It's just like, so A Million Miles Away. And
I got you.
Somebody remember his name.
I got you. A Million Miles Away. And it is a film of the life of Mexican American astronaut Jose M. Hernandez. Yes.
Do that instead of what I just said. and then you'll see something very, very similar, very, very similar vibe.
And thank you so much, Pedro. And to wrap it up, there's another question from our audience too. What are you working on right now? What's next?
I'm actually working on the sequel to Mexikid. Yeah. See those little Post-it notes behind me? I don't know if you can
Oh my goodness.
That's me writing.
Post-it notes. I see it now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually I'm past this stage of this writing process, but I didn't want to take my notes down in case I have to change something. But yeah, we're in one of the final drafts of the manuscript, and then hopefully I can start drawing any minute now. So.
Oh my goodness. Oh, muchísima suerte. Wow. I think I'm so excited. I'm like speechless right now. Yes. And I just want to give you maybe a chance to, in maybe a minute, any words for our future, artists here sitting at Durham School of the Arts, and those watching who might, want to write a book or have art to be their careers, or something that they just, inspire, keep on inspired to do. Like, what are some words that you might have for them?
Stay away from ice cream. It'll kill you. Cut it out.
Mentira, mentira.
The neat thing about us as humans, this is where I'm going to go. The thing about us as humans is we're storytelling machines. Like, that's how we communicate. That's how we evolved into a society, is because we were able to tell stories to tell people, hey, don't go near that thing, it'll eat your face, or don't eat that, don't eat that ice cream, it'll kill you. So innately we want to tell a story, and so you might think the story that you want to tell is boring or silly or it doesn't go anywhere, but I tell you now that all these stories are valuable, and if you have a memory, have a day, have a weird event, a weird conversation, an interesting conversation, write it down somewhere, keep notes for yourself. You're not going to use it right away. You're going to come back to it later on and go like, oh, that makes perfect sense now, because now that's the other part of being a human being, is that we make connections and we say, oh, this happened here, this feeling happened here, these things are connected somehow, and I'm going to make that connection and share it with somebody else, and then they can make, they'll have a connection too. So my really the whole meat of it is this, like, storytelling, and then storytelling in illustration too. I'm a big illustrator, and I love to tell stories with pictures, because it's the other part of my brain that works together. So basically what I'm trying to say is stories are important. They're the way we talk, they're the way we communicate, and I would recommend that everybody get a notebook, save those stories, write them on 3x5 cards, put them in a lunch pail, and later on you're going to be thanking yourself.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Pedro, and thank you to all the wonderful students at Durham School of the Arts.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Book Club, the Latinx KidLit Book Festival. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Luz.
Adios.